Everybody, my name's Nick Kottmeyer with DuPage County. We're here to obviously talk about the Liberty Park water improvement system. So if you guys are looking for the basketball game tonight, you're going to be sorely disappointed if you're in here. So I'd also like to introduce Steve May here. He's a village manager for Westmont. We're going to kind of do a tag team on the presentation to you and let everybody know you don't have to write this down. All the information you're going to see tonight is going to be posted on both the county's website as well as Westmont's website. So you can sit back, take in the information, and we are going to questions at the end. We will stay here as long as there's questions. So feel free, anything you want, we can answer those questions. So a quick overview of what we're going to be doing tonight. So why are we here? Over the years, DuPage County, myself, Greg Phillips here, we've received a number of complaints, water quality, water pressure, concerns out there. Lately, they seem to be ramping up a little bit in the Liberty Park area. And so that's kind of the genesis for why we're sitting here. We want to give you the information to have you as the homeowners make the final decision. So we're going to go over the complaints we received. Then we're going to look at what are the different options for water for Liberty Park. And I will tell you right now, there's not too many options. And we'll explain that concept. We're going to go over the survey that all the residents in here should have gotten, probably sometimes multiple. And if you didn't, I apologize for that. But I will go over the survey results. And then we will go over the availability of Lake Michigan water from the village of Westmont. And then we'll talk about the vehicle. If the residents choose to move forward, the vehicle with how we're going to implement that. And it's called a special service area or an SSA. It's just a vehicle in order to get in sewer, water, whatever improvement an area would like to have. We'll go through that. And then what does it mean for you financially? And so that will be in tonight's presentation. So a little bit about why we're here. We did receive a number of these, and like I said, I've been at the county for a while. I've been dealing with hearing concerns about the water quality in Liberty Park for many years before this. But these are some of what we've got in emails or texts from both Westmont and DuPage County, and that kind of started us down the path of, okay, obviously there might be a water quality problem here. We need to figure out, is there a solution to that? Where do we go from here? So that was the reason why we are here. So what are the different options out there for water systems? What do we consider? Depending if you're in the east or west part of this project, you either have a community well that you're on or private wells out there. And so that's always an option. Can you upgrade that? Can you look at that? And that is an option that the residents need to consider. We also looked at, okay, since you're unincorporated residents, you are the residents of DuPage County, can the county supply a water system to you? Unfortunately, we're over 2.5 miles away with our nearest water system. So there is no ability for us to extend a water system that distance to provide water to this area. We looked at Downers Grove. Downers Grove and Westmont are both in the area. Downers Grove, they have jurisdictional boundary agreements with Westmont. So really it came down to, if this area does want Lake Michigan water, the only viable option, the only alternative we have would be Westmont providing that Lake Michigan water to this area. So process elimination, there's really two options that are available to the residents. You stay with the system you have and maybe do improvements to that. I know it's a private system, that's one option, or the village of Westmont for Lake Michigan water. So this is kind of why we are standing here tonight. We sent out, in 2021, we sent out, I think, 3 or 4 different versions, not versions, but 3 or 4 different reminders for this survey. And this shows the survey results that we received from the entire Liberty Park subdivision. And you can see, and it was very simple. Do you want to learn more about possible, other sources, Lake Michigan sources? There's no commitment on this, none whatsoever. This was simply, you want to learn more information, and that's why we're standing here. We've spent, the past probably 8 months coming up with a preliminary design, coming up with the costing for you, coming up with the dynamics. This is a very complicated project with an east and west phase, and Steve will go into that in much more detail with how the project will be completed. But as you can see by the survey results, we got an overwhelming response. 56% of the surveys responded, yes, we want to learn more. We had 10% saying, no, we didn't want to learn more, and we had 33% no response. I can tell you after tonight's meeting, we will send out another survey that will have a little bit more detail in it. The survey response is what drives what we do. We will not move forward if the residents do not want it. We will move forward if the majority do want it. So you drive as residents, you drive where this project goes after tonight. So at that point, and I will definitely at the end come back up for questions, but Steve will take over at this point for describing the project.
Thank you. We did have very well described what brought us here tonight. When we were approached, some of the contact did come straight to the Village of Westmont, while some of it went through DuPage County, and working on it together. There was a lot of staff involved that have been working on this a long while. One of them, the one that worked the most on it, our previous public works director, retired earlier this year. So in different ways, we've been looking at this and what it took to get to this point to just try and answer the questions. And it's, as we'll find out, it's very complicated, it's complex. There's very different features about the different areas and have different needs to address that. On our end, I'm presenting all this for you tonight, but it's between our Public Works Department, Finance, and the Village Administration, working, putting all of that together with this, this one solution of how this might work. Nick described, we do have a different phase. We're calling them phases. It's not that they phases, to be built at different times, or I suppose they could be, but the point is that the west phase, can't call it half because they're much greater size, is different than the east phase because of that community well. And there's 3 streets in each one of these phases, so you know your neighborhood as well as anybody else. But Park, Liberty, and Washington are the ones that are on the west phase, or served by the community well, is what we'll call it here. And then Lincoln, Grant, and Adams have the individual homes that have their own water supply. There's a lot of exceptions in there too. There's other overlapping, how the commercial, I learned of a new one just before this meeting started, how they, properties that are in the Village of Westmont but still might be in the Liberty system. And there's a very small component that the Village of Downers Grove addressed on William Street there at the west side, was on Liberty Park water, but we're already in the Village of Downers Grove. And as Nick mentioned, we have it is our planning area, the Village of Westmont, through formal agreement with the Village of Downers Grove. Besides the different needs, there's also kind of I'm referring to the Village of Westmont, and it is the Village of Westmont, but the Village of Westmont Water Utility is its own enterprise. And in fact, the utility is older than the Village of Westmont, so it was first, got its first operating permit in 1909. So we have an operating utility within, a department of the Village of Westmont. So I'm going to describe the differences between the 2 phases, or with the different features. Or we're talking about, the previous slide is building a water main, water distribution network connected to the Village of Westmont, and it's red and green up there as far as the 2 phases, and then how to service the properties that are in there. So we have one master project and get as much of it done as possible under a construction contract, and then how do we address the individual homes within those areas. This slide, I'm starting with the east here purposely, in that this is an example of how Westmont or the Westmont Water Utility would handle any property in the community or access to the water system. The water main may exist, or it might be extended. If it is extended, it's by the developer or the property owner. There's 2 examples of that already in Liberty Park, where private extension of a water main was run down a block. And so the construction projects in there, the village, after it's installed, owns and maintains, adopts the water main itself. We take responsibility for the water service up to the valve box or the B box, which is roughly at the property line. On here it's shown as a public sidewalk, which doesn't exist where you're at. But if you know where your property line's at, that's where a valve would go. And then from there, the responsibility for the rest of the service all the way into the home is that of the private property owner. And in Liberty Park, it's even more interesting in that on the east side is that you have the individual wells. We have no information about how that well comes into your homes, front, back, what that is. So you also have your individual, internal plumbing costs inside the home as well. So this is set up as included in the SSA or included in the funding. So the master project is to build the water main network and all the services up to the property line and have them there available to use. On the west, it's very different because you're already on a single community well, and we cannot build just EPA. We build a new water distribution network in there, the old one has to be taken out of service. And with that, there's the cost of abandoning it and doing all of that, but everybody, all the amount of homes on that network, homes and businesses, all have to switch over to the other system. So you're in a all or nothing category. You all have to do this together, or we don't do it at all because one eliminates the existing water source. But because it's like that, and to try and not have keep the upfront costs to a minimum, in this example, you'll see it's all included in the SSA, which means we'll all the way into the home, since everybody has to participate if we proceed. All the way into the home, all the way in, you'll have a water meter, so the water meter spread and get it into the home, and then from there, if there's any plumbing modifications, you'll have to figure that out. But we can build that into the cost of the contract to construct at the time of the project. That is, well, it's included in the SSA, and when I proceed and we talk about these other slides, you'll see why even the costs are different when we get into that. How to build something like that, the funding, the special service area was talked about. Later we'll see how the whole project, both phases, are together a $13 to $15 million project all included, and that's without the per home expenses on the east phase. So $15 million or 13, you don't have that. If this was a developer, they would be putting it in, building it into the cost of the home, and then it just it's inherited, or it's donated, or it's dedicated to the Village of Westmont or to the Village of Westmont water utility once it's put into service. And so there's no funding there, there's no funding at the county, there's no funding at the Village of Westmont water utility, and how to pay for this project. And on here, it refers to a low interest loan. The Illinois EPA has it's called the State Revolving Fund. And we take very great advantage of that for other projects that we do that are water related. And they, it's an extremely low interest loan. Right now we're using 2%. It's 2% or less for as long as we can remember. And it's very attractive to do that, and it helps do it, and plus it's a 20-year loan. So when you have compatible with a special service area that has a 20-year term, we use the special service area to pay the loan debt back in that system. Pay back over 20 years. I only threw it up there because what we're talking about today, exists today. By the time we get to doing something like this, interest rates might be different. This is our best information for, if we were starting tomorrow, this is what it would look like. if that state revolving loan, we have never been denied the revolving loan ever until earlier this year for a different project. I still think that's solvable and surmountable, but we kind of got woken up a little bit about that's not just an automatic thing to achieve. So we're using that, I'll still come back to the loans, but that doesn't stop us from looking for grant opportunities either, whether it's county or state or federal government. Your Congressman Caston has been looking for sources to do this too, and anything that we can get done and taken off the top is just an improvement over what we're going to show you here today. But right now, this is the worst case, as if it were all being paid for under the loan. If we had to go to a general bond or a bank loan, you're more in the category, I was saying 8%, but the finance people say it's even higher than that. So right now today, it would be a problem. 2 years from now, maybe that would be more attractive. I don't know, but those are the opportunities to do that. We don't have to solve funding tonight, but we do, other than that's how we would approach it if we were going to begin. So when you have, the purpose of this slide is to demonstrate that the day you're all committed and we're going to proceed and everybody's not necessarily happy about it, no one's, it's all expensive, but when we're all committed and ready to proceed and we're going to go, it'll be 2 years before you actually have potable Lake Michigan water coming out of your tap. So it's a very long process, and if it's delayed or waited till it was an emergency, that would have a very big impact on what was going on. So that's a decision making that you'll all have to decide as far as the value about when you want to proceed with something like this. And that's just demonstrating that after we know and how it's going to be funded and set up the SSA, we have the concurrently start the construction design work, apply for the permit. You need an Illinois EPA permit to put the water main in service and to use it, and that's all very complicated. And then the tedious task of moving every property over one by one onto the new system, and then we still got to go back in and abandon what's existing out there today. Again, that's not the for troubleshooting tonight, that's just how we're approaching it. The best case is that 2% state revolving loan, 2% or less. What is an SSA? Nick covered it a little bit. We drew this up because of the differences of the two SSAs, of the two project areas. It's makes sense to create SSAs that are of, kind of like type. At one point, now I'm going back a half a year, but we didn't know if there was like a third one, and it was how far apart to pull this apart to have all these differences. But now when Downers Grove proceeded with their portion, this was a great limit, and I'm glad to knock this down to just two different areas. We debated whether or not to have two meetings, west and east, just because the characteristics are very different, but we're trying to cover that all tonight, and you'll just have to, I'm going to go through every slide I show you is going to have an east version and a west version because they are different. But that's why the two special service areas. We get to, I said it out loud, but the total project costs are nearly $13 million. This is set up, and another problem I had in right up to before we started, all of this information in these slides are all like this big circular feeding each other that I'm constantly rearranging the information, trying to figure out the best way to present it. But here are the construction costs. On the west, you have all things considered, we don't have to go into each item, but at the bottom in the blue there is $8.4 million just to build the infrastructure of the west phase. Now that does include going into the homes in that particular phase. On the east, it is not only, I can't read that number, 4.4 million, and that is, well, it's a smaller area, so there's less infrastructure. You don't have all the costs going into the home. Because they're on their own individual well, there is no immediate requirement to hook onto the new system. So anybody who's got an individual well on their property will maintain it for as long as it's reasonable to maintain it, and then you could hook on at any time in the future. But if you did it, and so those are some sample costs below that of what those types of costs would be if you did it on your own later. If we build that into the project costs, or if you do it at the time of the project while there's already a contractor doing that type of work, we can get better prices, we would do all that. We would waive, like for example, the connection fees that would go to a tap-on if you were going to do it further, but that's if it's done as part of the project. If you wait years and do that on your own, that's just an example of the types. Those are today's costs. I don't know what they'll be, in the future either. So how do we, how did we have the construction costs, but how are we calculating how the SSA would operate? And this is starting with West Phase, making sure a special service area is a physical property tax. It's on your property tax bill, it is an assessed increment for that. Although when we calculate what that rate would be, it is fixed for the life of the SSA, unlike a village or municipal taxes. They're all levied each year and they might change a little bit. But in this particular calculation, you have 332 parcels that are that have a total assessed value of $24 million for all the properties in that region, and that's the assessed value. So you have a market value of your home, and your assessed value, if you consult your own tax bill, is about very close to 1/3 of what the market value is of the home. So we're talking about assessed value, and everything on your tax bill is a percent charged against your assessed value. So dividing that out against those parcels, applying the loan to it at the 2%, you back calculate all that, and the debt payment is $500,000 a year for that loan to pay that back. That divided by the total assessment gets the tax rate. So the cost is spread out over all the properties, but it's spread out over all the properties based on the value of the properties. So the lower, as opposed to charging you per frontage, of what you're in front of your home. So it's the total cost of the whole project. You're all doing this together. It's tied to the assessed value. That comes with that tax rate, that 0.0214. We have the calculation there, per 100 assessed value, but we were using our example as a $300,000 home, not because that means anything, because the assessed value of a $300,000 home is $100,000, and it's a little bit easier to do it in your head. So the examples we're using tonight are solely this $300,000 / $100,000 example. If you know your assessed value is $80,000, then you're about 80% of the numbers that we're talking about. Conversely, if it's $125,000 on your existing bill, then it's 125% of what we're talking about. But this example is $2,000, $2,140 per year on the tax, on the property tax. This is the east. There's not as many properties, 172 parcels, but the same calculation, total assessed value. And you can see the tax rate is very similar, 0.020527. So they come out to be very compatible. It's just that the areas are different. So but you can see you still got a $2,000 tax burden at the end, regarding which side you're on. This is all about how to calculate the SSA. The SSA, it's the Village of Westmont, it's the Village of Westmont water utility, and the building all of this in unincorporated area. So we're talking about SSA, but there's also an annexation component that comes with that. I can talk about what it would be if it were any other location, and I will. The annexation, or the overview of annexation, the water utility, every other water customer on the Westmont water system is a resident of the Village of Westmont, or if they can't physically incorporate, they have a pre-annexation with the Village of Westmont. There's a couple odd cases where we're serving homes in other communities, Downers Grove and Clarendon Hills, that we have an agreement with that community about how to service that, who does the billing, things like that. Doesn't apply here, but this is the high-level overview of annexation and the impacts as well, that how we would handle it anywhere else in the community. So that's in all cases. I will, for the rest of tonight, be interchanging annexation with pre-annexation agreements. Annexation is the expectation. Sometimes, in order to annex, it's not just a willing to do so. You also have to touch a Village of Westmont boundary, or you can't legally do it. So that's where the agreement is that we'll come to an agreement, and when the time comes and you're capable to do it, we'll determine when to enact those. And not that it's occurring here, but if anybody's paying attention, we've got other unincorporated areas that touch our boundary. They're much smaller, but today, this administration does do involuntary annexations, and we already talked about that it was a Westmont planning area. So I'm only speaking from my perspective, the Village of Westmont perspective, it's inevitable that Liberty Park is incorporated into the community. It's just when, under what circumstances, will it be voluntary, will it be involuntary, will it be part of this project? Annexation also comes with a different taxing burden that comes in here too. It's not as we'll see, not as alarming as what you might imagine, but there's also other benefits to doing annexation as well, including other districts and things like that. Talked about the planning area. We said there was a bullet on there that said exemption for west phase, but we are going to treat the west and the east similarly. I'm just a little bit of just the benefits of incorporation, where it says village snow plowing, but it's the maintenance of the pavements and everything as well. If it's a scattering of who's incorporated and who's isn't, the township, primarily Downers Grove Township, but the north end is York Township. And York Township just had a big investment up there recently. Looks, very nice. But they'll continue to maintain that until a certain portion of it is in the Village of Westmont, and then it's a Village of Westmont item to maintain. Fixing streets and doing repairs is one thing because you know exactly what the boundaries are, but you can't snow plow and pick up and down and do that. So we have this agreement with the township of what we service and what they service. So that'll continue for some time. So it's not just snow plowing. I'm just referring to why that word's up on the slide. The public water supply, that's why we're here tonight. That's another benefit. It was the access to the Westmont water. Police and fire services and EMS, it's not that they don't respond if something happens up there now. Your fire and EMS, you are in a, when I say you, I'm talking about the 99% majority of you all are in a special service area for there used to be a North Westmont Fire Protection District, which had nothing to do with the Village of Westmont, except that district levied their own taxes, and then they hired the Westmont Fire Department to service it. But they had a tax cap. They couldn't pay for the services at the same rate that the residents in the community pay for it, and the district was devolved with the help of the chairman and county board chair, and we got rid of the taxing district, but it was replaced with a special service area that's just for fire and EMS. Now, it's still on the slide as far as being a benefit, even though we're providing the fire and EMS now, but you're paying for it under an SSA. And in this one example, that those services are also built into the tax rate for the Village of Westmont as well. So coming into the Village of Westmont takes you out of the special service area for the fire and EMS. It's not a wash, but it's still one of the things that changes, or one of the few things on the plus column that will be on there. Then there's other things you were kind of simultaneously brought into. These are districts, the library district, the Westmont Park district, and then all the services that are entitled for that too. So it's just a little bit of a pitch for the benefits and why those are in there. We do know and we realize that there's already the tax burden of the SSA, and then compounding, with the annexation, it's piling on a lot of property taxes all at the same time. So, did I go twice? So the way we were approaching this is, whereas annexation is still an expectation, it's not an expectation on the day the construction starts. But we would be talking about pre-annexation agreements, and these are still things you have to determine. Your opinion matters on all this too, but we can push this out 5 years and not have an immediate need to do that, so that it doesn't jeopardize the project as a whole. This is most important with the west phase because you're in that all or nothing category. But on the east, we normally would have treated that like my first slide with the homes, that would have been expected on the day that you hooked on. But to treat the both, as part of the same project, I'm not calling it an offer, that same arrangement would be afforded those on the east as well. There is a difference. You all don't have you do have a water bill, but you have a lump sum, very attractive cost for water now, and you will also have, measured, metered direct costs for the public water supply, and being unincorporated is more expensive, the cost of the water, than it is for in town as well. This is the west phase example, kind of what I just talked about. Annexation agreements can be used. Then not that rules out the involuntary annexation opportunities when certain triggers are met for different reasons. Not as part of this project, but that's still out there in all by itself. If part of this project, well, the items up there, again, this slide and the next one will compare the two differences. So you have the, with annexation, and there it says pre-annexation agreement, that or annexation, you immediately, even if you signed a pre-annexation agreement and you haven't annexed yet, we're still going to afford you the in-town water rate. Without the agreement, you'll have the out-of-town rate, and it's that simple. So but the east phase is interesting, or they have a different option. They can do the pre-annexation, do the same thing, and that's all the same. You want to annex, and we'll hook you up, and we'll do that with no cost for the tap if you do it as part of the project. But they already have their individual well that they can keep for as long as the well is serviceable. They've got the ability to do no annexation agreement at all and not even deal with it because they don't have to hook on. You're still part of an SSA, you the east. You're paying for the infrastructure to be out front, but you don't have to do the hook on at any time except by your choosing. But as I mentioned earlier, it's more expensive to do it later, except that all the expenses up front is one big number if you do it on opening day. How did we, how does this apply to the $300,000 home? We have this sample chart, and just so you know, when we're all done here tonight, we do have individual sheets for you by your address that is our best estimate of where your pluses and minuses add up at your location. But this is the sample, the $300,000 home, the $100,000 assessed home. And you have the first number, the 2140, is the number we calculated earlier, and that's just for the SSA, and this is an annual cost that's on there. You have, with the annexation, you have the additional property taxes, which is $1,146 for all the Westmont related items, park, library, and all those. You do have a cheaper water rate if you look across the columns, and this is an average usage, better water conservation and practices. You're in control of keeping your water bill down. There's just a nominal, you're not paying the $400 per year to the homeowners association, so that's a little bit of a savings. But when you look at the totals down at the bottom, the difference between annexing and not annexing, and I did not take into, or maybe we did take into account, coming out of the fire protection district, but there's only a 700, and I say only, like $700 is not petty cash, but the numbers are very close with annexation and without. So given that the other costs and the fees and those other items are all, covered, this feels like an opportunity to consider it right as part of this project. Now that's the west phase. East phase is a little bit different because the upfront costs are the upfront cost, the SSA is similar. It's still a $2,000 number, but if they do nothing else, well, without annexation, you don't have any of the village burden. Your annual water cost is zero as far as what we're calculating because you've got your own well. So what you have to figure out what it costs you to operate your own well and add that in there. But that's the same, either way. And then there's that garbage services that were on there too. I didn't cover that, but when you're in the village of Westmont, you've moved to our waste hauler, currently Waste Management, and it's significantly cheaper than other contracts from around. It's very healthy, but I caution again, we don't want two different waste haulers running around in the same subdivision, tearing up the worst traffic your neighborhood sees are garbage trucks. So there's a consideration of trying to manage that as well. But that's our agreement with Waste Management Incorporated, is that they service all of the properties that are in Westmont. They're very generous with brush pickup and the landscape waste and things like that as well. You do the comparison, but I'm just saying that's one of the differences that's on there. It's only a $44 number on the slide, but the service is greater. And depending on how long this takes to go, their contract is up in 2 years, and we will be bidding that out again. So today's numbers are today's numbers, as like I said, if we started tomorrow. These rest of these slides are how we came up with the numbers that you saw earlier. I was talking about my confusion about what order to present, the information in, and didn't want you focusing on these details, but you have the village tax rate that is shown on there without the fire SSA, so that's already subtracted out. And the library and the park district has a small increment, and you add those together and it becomes the middle number on the chart on the right, that 1.1464. So that is the number we were using, and it's in the center of the slide, but the number applies to both columns, both east and west, and they're all added up to the bottom. And east and west, for the $300,000 home, it's $3,300 versus $3,200. So again, very similar when you get apply those numbers to that point. Other information, this is how we came up with the garbage numbers, the water rates, if you want to calculate their usage. It's you're metered, like I said, per 1,000 gallons. Right now you have unlimited use, so your own habits will come into play as to how much you can save with that or spend on that. And also, again, based on water rates that are today. We've put off water rate increases for several years, mostly pandemic related or economy related, but those are due as well. There's no commitment when to raise them, but that's something that will change between, when you hold this slide up, to me in a few years, with the rate changes, it's because it can change every year. This brings us to the timeline. Those numbers represented where we're at there. It's like, what do we do and how do we go from here? Tonight, speaking for myself, the purpose was, we had the same purpose, but there was a lot of outreach this time, towards the DuPage County and the Village of Westmont, and we're trying to answer the questions that you have of how to proceed. How we proceed and when we proceed is in your control, if at all. Maybe nothing, but like we said, there's the 2-year danger of what could happen in that period of time. We don't want to be in a situation where any emergencies exist either, but just need to be aware of all of that. The first cell is is tonight's meeting. I said we had those personalized information for you, so at the tables out there, if you want to, look up your address, they've got a sheet printed out for you, and again, our best estimate on how to proceed. Do you want to cover any more with me? Where we go from here?
Yeah, so I think it's important to realize from the county standpoint, you being unincorporated residents, our role is to, if you want the project, to help form the SSA, and then at that point, we step back, and in Westmont then constructs, owns, and maintains. But so, like I said, tonight is information only. There's a lot of information here, a lot. And all of it's going to be on the website. There will be questions that we'll answer. So that's kind of where we're at. Based upon tonight, there will be another survey that goes out. That's part 2. The county will control the survey. We will send it out. And based upon what the wishes are of the subdivision, yes or no, we will then either the project will stop at that point, or we'll move to SSA formation. That's the third point. And then from our standpoint,
but how long before that survey? We're still given time.
So yeah, there's going to be plenty of time, because we want to hear from, whether it's 100% no, 100% yes, 50-50, we want to know what the residents want, because you control where this thing goes. And so that will likely we will likely send out the survey in the next couple weeks. Maybe it'll be out right after Thanksgiving, and then we will continue to mail those surveys out until we get responses back. Whether that takes 2-3 months, we need to know what the will of the community is. And then based upon that, we, the county, DuPage County, and we actually have 2 county board members here. We have Elizabeth Chaplin, and Paula Deacon Garcia. They're here as well. They want to hear your voices, and then they will be responsible for taking the SSA through or not taking it through. If an SSA is formed legally, we're at DuPage County, then the project then shifts to Village of Westmont. They will move forward with building it, since they own and operate. And that's where you have the other parts, the annexation agreements. The village will be applying for the SRF loan, design and permitting, and finally construction. Really long process with a project this complex. I urge everybody, understand it, a lot of information, ask questions, and I've done 15 SSAs, I think, in my career, and I'll tell you that, as much as somebody doesn't want it, there are people that do want it, and that we just want to hear, yes or no, which way to go on this, and that's what the board is looking for. So.
And it's not just to ask us questions too. I mean, certainly consult your own tax people, your own counsel, your realtors have a lot of good information about the merits or the obstacles of proceeding with anything like this.
And before we open it up for questions, and I know that it's probably information overload tonight, I've done it enough to know some of the questions I typically get. And so I will handle the first part of these, like more the generic SSA, and then the specific project will turn back to Steve. So how soon will construction start? The earliest this can go is probably 2024. The process with the EPA loan, the permitting, all of that takes a very long time. Even understanding what the will of the community is will take us a good 6 months to understand it. And the one thing I will promise you from DuPage County's part is we will communicate along, as we will send out the surveys. Once we get the surveys, we have a significant amount of the people answering the surveys, we will send another letter out to you saying, here's the results of the survey. So you will know exactly where you're at, what's happening in the process. If the project moves forward, we'll let you know. If the project does not move forward, we'll let you know. That's our obligation as DuPage County. Will I be able to keep my well if I connect to the water system? The answer is no. If you have a well and you connect to the water system, for contamination issues, that is a Village of Westmont requirement, is that the wells are capped, and we will help you through it. If you get to that point, it's something that all of this information will be given, but the answer is no, you cannot keep a well. What happens if I sell my house? Big question, can I pay off the SSA? The answer is no. An SSA goes with the home. It's an entire area for 20 years. You sell the house, it goes to the next owner. So after 20 years, it comes off your tax bills and it's met. But you have the benefit of the infrastructure putting in place while you're there. The next person has a benefit once you move. So it stays with the house. Is it possible for the cost to be higher or lower? This is a really common question. When we do DuPage County, if that's what the residents want to form it, there will be a cap set on it. There will be, we talked about 2% interest rate. We talked about a 20-year term, and we talked about what the tax rate's going to be. That will be set. If any of those change to the worse, they go higher, we cannot legally move forward without getting your approval to do that. We'll have to go through this process again and do that. So there's no like, oh, it costs, $500,000 more or $1 million more. You control the process. We set the limits, the upper limits, and we cannot go over that legally by state law. We have to come back to get your approval. Now on the good side, can it go lower? The answer is absolutely it can. And for a couple different reasons. Steve mentioned before, are we going to pursue grants? Every opportunity. I'll even say to the point of our own village, our own county board, actually Liz Chaplin, our chair of finance, she started a program for DuPage County to get Lake Michigan water in areas. There's money available. Now, is it 13, 14 million? No. There is probably $500,000, maybe $750,000 that would be available from ARPA money. Now, and that we would absolutely bring that to bear. If we get any state money, federal money, all that comes to bear. So what I would say is, if it goes lower, you achieve 100% of that benefit. It cannot go higher unless if you, as the residents, approve it.
Does the annual get better or the term get shorter?
It can get shorter. We can't charge you more, so we can't go up on the interest rate, we can't go up on the mill rate or the tax rate, and we can't go up on the term. We can make all of that better for you as we move forward if we make it better. So that's important to realize. There won't be any change. Will the SSA charges be tax deductible? Hear it every time we do it. I will tell you this, it's on your tax bill. I would recommend that you talk to a tax consultant, whoever does your taxes, an attorney, to see if it's tax deductible. It is on your tax bill, and you can make that decision with the experts. And then, do we have to annex into the village at that point? Steve, I'll turn it over to you to answer the final 3 questions on that. And then what we'll do is we'll open it up for everybody.
So the annexation, I believe I covered the annexation thing. That is the expectation. We're not trying to pile on, as I described it, and do it all at once, but we do expect to have a plan for, how and when and how we can wean into that. There will be some examples, like I said, that, annexation is not just a will to do so. I'm repeating what I said earlier, but your property, whoever's asking the questions, got to be physically connected to the Village of Westmont to annex. Now, if many of you are doing that, there will be a chain of connectivity that we can do that. What I didn't cover is it's expensive to go through the annexation process. If there was no water project and there was no anything else, you've got a couple neighbors that have come in for whatever purposes they wanted to, and you have to do the plat of annexation, you have to have that drafted up, you have to petition the village, as the formality, and do that, and then there's that, planning and zoning component that you have to go through, to do that, and that's expensive. A plat's several $100s, almost $1,000 just to do the plat. If everybody, I'm not suggesting it, but if 100% of everybody wanted to incorporate at the same time as part of this project, I can do one, you wouldn't have any of those costs. We would do that. I don't know if you can just do it with a paper agreement and have that recorded and do it, but I think part of the reason for spreading this out and getting people to tie on is that I got to get a drafts person to figure out what that actual limits are, and then in order to have that recorded at the county recorder's office. So there's a lot of parts to annexation, and works better the more that are connected together. Annex to the village, what other projects? This special service area is, so if you annex into the village, we instantly inherit all of the public infrastructure that's out front. So the streets, the pavements, I'm not aware of any street lighting or public sidewalks that are out there, so it doesn't really apply. It would just be the road work that we have to maintain, and it's immediately our responsibility. So we would repair that. But what other projects will be constructed? There is nothing else included with this SSA. If there was, I know there's not, but I'm making it up. If there was interest and everybody wanted all locations curb and gutter and do all that and public sidewalks down both sides of the street, we would go through the same exercise, calculate what all of that is, and here is the, the cost to construct that. So the answer to the question is nothing other than the water distribution system. And what happens with the current agreement with the Liberty Park Homeowners Association? It's not clear.
I can do that. We've had conversations. I know, especially the west phase that's on the community well. Obviously, that's part of our design effort with negotiating that, but all indications are that the fees would be waived for disconnecting. But obviously, we would verify that, and that's part of our design efforts as we move forward. So that one would not come into play. I think we would manage that. So before we go into the individual questions, the couple things. First of all, like I said, this entire lot of information. I know your heads are probably spinning with everything going on. All of this will be on both of our websites within the week, as well as an actual video of tonight will be on there. We are also taking questions that we will post the question and the answer on the website so everybody can see it, and you can go through there. Couple things
tonight. The questions tonight and the questions that come up after
absolutely,
tonight,
absolutely.
We're going to compile them into one master.
If there's one thing to realize, go on our websites to look at the information, but email questions to lpwater@dupagec.org, and we will help answer those. Like I said, the role of, before we start the questions, the role of DuPage County is we want to understand what this area wants. We want to help you get there, and I've seen it time and time again. As strongly as some people feel one way, they feel strongly the other way, and we just want to understand what that split is and where you're at. So I guess at that, we'll open it up to questions. How do you want to handle that?
The best way to handle that, one, it's very difficult to see you all out there with the lights on. At the end of each of these aisles, there's a microphone on a stand at the back of the aisle. The answers to your questions might make a difference whether or not you're on the east or west half. So if you want to line up at each microphone and ask your question there, that way everybody can hear the question and we can go that way, and you'll just have to take turns on your own. If you're done with that, or if you don't have any questions, like I said, out in the lobby, we've got those individual worksheets.
Yeah, and if anybody is going to leave, make sure you grab your worksheet for your house out there to see what the expense would be.
Start here.
For a private well, does the cost include capping off the well?
If you're on a private well and an individual single well only servicing your home, those costs aren't built into anything because you actually have the option to not do that. So we had some forecasted costs to do the connection, but everybody's well is different, how far away it is from the home, how deep it is. You'll have to calculate that on your own.
Okay. So everything tying into the home is included, it's just not capping off the well and getting rid of it?
Yeah, so I'm going to take it your address is on either Lincoln, Grant, or Adams, and because those costs only went up to the valve box that was roughly at the property line out front. Your home, I don't know is the well in the back? Does it come in the side? Where does it go? All those features are custom, and those have to be added on. So the SSA only pays for what's called the B-box, the valve, right at the property line out front, and there is nothing else included.
Okay.
How many, how much of a majority do you need? Like, how much are you looking for to get like 100% or?
I can handle that one. So the question was, how much majority do we need? The board typically, I mean, an SSA requires a simple majority. The board likes to see probably in the 60 to 65%, because you will lose people theoretically as you go through the process. So they would like to see a fairly clear majority of the subdivision interested in this project before they would move forward, typically.
My other question is, if your tax bill is already taken care of through your loan, would the SSA be a separate bill, or would that be just added into the tax bill that you already have?
That all SSAs are in the tax bill, or will be included in your tax bill.
One last question. Have you guys done any, like, looking into how viable our current water system is, or are there any, like, is there any kind of immediate, like, problems, or like?
So that's a very, very good question. And the question was, do you have any idea how the current water system? And the answer is no, we don't, because it's a private water system, and the reliance on the pipes. That's none of these SSAs rely on the existing infrastructure because of the age and somewhat question of the condition. Some of them, that would be a question for the current supplier.
Okay, thank you.
Question over here?
Yes. Well, I live on Grant, private well. I would obviously see there's a distinction between the east side and the west side. I understand the west side wells aren't the best. The common community well is not the best. My well on Grant Street, there's nothing wrong with it. It works fine. I understand also, though, we're talking the cost for running the water mains gets assessed to me. Then we have to pay for the cost of running the water mains into the house, which means also, if I'm correct, the sewer bill gets rated tied to the water bill, so that bill goes up. I have a larger family, so we're talking $300, $350 easily, an increase every month. What would be the cost benefit? What would be the benefit for the people that have wells there's nothing wrong with?
I can answer, because I run into this a lot for SSAs, and the point is, okay, you have a private well, you're not on the west phase, you don't have a community well. If your well is perfectly good, that might be a situation where you as a homeowner say, okay, I either want the infrastructure in front of my house or I don't want the infrastructure. And if I do want the infrastructure, I'm not going to hook into that until maybe my private well fails in 5, 10, 15 years. And that's something that we see a lot. I mean, I'm used to, I'll tell you right now, where we have water systems in the county, in DuPage County, where we own and operate them, we see that a lot in what happens when, we'll see a checkerboard of, 2 people on a street hook in, 4 people not hook in, and over time, they do hook in. But yes, if your well is perfectly fine and you're happy with it, you have that option of not necessarily hooking in right away.
But we still have to pay for it.
You have to pay for the infrastructure in the street.
Yes.
So that I would elaborate on that question. So the east side could easily just not participate in any of it, but you would have to back up to a slide that showed the map, and you referred to the survey results. I forgot to point out that every single map that had the water main network drawn on it also had, green squares and yellow squares, and the green was the positive responses of interest in doing this. So if your east side has 60-75% support for the SSA, and you have zero interest, it could still be created, and you're right, you would be imposed with that special service area,
Now,
because
if
the
we-
majority of the community wants
If we
it.
go through, if this goes through whether I tap in or not, does this almost require us to be annexed into Westmont? Because I know you guys, Westmont's been wanting us for a long time, and we've been fighting it for years to not be annexed. And so I'm curious,
More
is
than that.
tying into Westmont like this necessary for the running of the water mains?
No. Well, at your location, it's not even necessary to participate, and it's no. Now, I'm still going to back up and say, as part of this project, it is not. But that doesn't mean that other things won't happen, and we have been, there will be involuntary annexations, not necessarily in Liberty Park, not necessarily soon, but as little smaller islands of unincorporated pockets are created, it has to be less than 60 acres is the answer. Then those are incorporated automatically just by the municipality.
Thank you.
Kind of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Ladies first.
Kind of some of the same question he asked, and I just want to double verify. So even if I'm on Grant Street as well.
That's East Face.
So if I choose not to have the annex or the water to the house, I'm still stuck paying that $2,000 plus a year for you putting it out, just out there into the street, correct?
Correct.
Correct, if your whole area is interested, of the majority of your area is interested in doing it, then yes.
So if people in my area say, no, we don't want this, you're not going to put that stuff out at the beginning of the street and we would just
No.
wait it out?
Right.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
But I refer you, and some of these maps I was referring to are out front too. You can see, just so you can gauge the interest of all the green that's on there, there was a very positive interest on both sides.
Now, one thing real quick, my neighbor got a letter. I'd gotten the survey, but I didn't get a letter to come to this. I only knew about it because my neighbor told me about it. So I'm just kind of curious what happened, how, because I see a few of my neighbors didn't get letters here because I don't see them here, and they were quite interested in this meeting, and I didn't realize the extent of this meeting.
I would absolutely, on your way out, talk to the people out front, make sure they have your correct address. A lot of times I will tell you that and I don't know your particular situation, but for everybody, if there's trusts out there, depending on where the official address, the owner goes to, that can mess things up. I will tell you, we sent out letter surveys. We typically get 30 to 35 letters back undeliverable for some reason. So I would absolutely, if you did not get the letter or know people who did not, please talk to the people out there, because our whole goal is to get the word out to everybody. And from your standpoint, if you see anybody or hear of anybody not getting a letter, please share the information.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Why
the more
we're
people
recording
that know.
it.
What?
And it's why we're recording it.
That's why we're recording it, absolutely. We want people, the more information out there, the more knowledge, the more responses back. Because from the county's standpoint, we really just, whether you move forward or not we really don't, that's up to you. We just want to help you get to what you guys want to get to.
To editorialize as an East Side Liberty Park person, I know the pain of having to put in a new well once a well collapsed, the financial hassle that is, and all the costs associated with this crummy water. I'm all for it, but my question is, well, let me, one further aside, yes, there's a cost involved, but your property values will increase, I assume, with lake water compared to being on a public well or on a private well. My question is regarding their survey. I noticed your 2021 survey, there was 30% non-responding. How does that factor in? Are those no votes, or do you just go by, do you have to meet a benchmark and then just choose the people who responded?
From the county standpoint, when we run these, no response counts as, we've always counted it as a no vote. Because we want to see the actual yes, I want it, before we move forward. Because the last thing we want to do is go through the SSA formation process. Okay. It is long and cumbersome on everybody's part. Once we start it, we don't want to necessarily have it fail. We want to make sure that we know there's an interest level, and our goal is to make sure we represent you, and that's That's what we want to do. So the no response equals a no in our book. Now, it's a little bit on that first one, like, hey, we want more information, a little bit looser. We're just giving you information. There's nothing
There was no
out
cost
there.
associated.
Yeah.
And
All
how
right,
long
thank
ago
you.
was that? And that's how long it took to get to today?
Yeah, and that took 3 or 4 surveys to get to 34 or however many no responses we had.
Actually, for the west project, actually going to have a question. I could see how maybe the east doesn't go as likely to do it, especially if they have no interest in tapping in. You're going to treat them as separate, right? So if there is a majority for the west that does it, but a non-majority for the east, you would still do the SSA for the west?
It's a very good question in that they are designed so that they can be built separately, except that if the east didn't happen and west really, really, really wanted to proceed, there's a little bit of that infrastructure we have to build all the way back to Cass Avenue to connect it. So the construction costs go up a little bit. We would recalculate it and do that.
I
But
would maybe
it's physically
suggest that that
possible.
is an option
Yeah,
because...
so, I mean, I know that we've talked east or west can go independent.
Yeah.
And, you know, that could be the situation where the county's contribution offsets that, that amount. So, yes, I mean, I think that's how they were designed. East can go or west can go, both can go, none can go.
Okay.
Over here.
So is it a simple majority then, like the Senate, 51-49? So let's just say 51 houses in the community will say, yes, we want it. 49 either say no or don't vote. Is it just a simple majority?
So it is by state law a simple majority, but I can tell you historically, the board likes to see a higher number than a simple majority. They like to see a fairly, you know, representative number. 51-49 is awful tight, and your process can fail at any time. I mean, like I said, the board typically in the past, it's been a couple years since we've run an SSA, typically would like to be at least at the 60% level.
So you guys would make that decision based off of the SSA then, if it's that close of a vote then?
Yeah, I mean, we bring it to the board, we ask for public comment, and realize the whole formation process, that is at the county side. We are your representatives unincorporated. Your voice makes a big difference. You know, how coming will keep you in the loop, how it is, where it's at. And at 51-49, that's where the no responses make all the difference in the world. And we will continue to try to get I mean, our goal would be to have 100% response. I don't care if it's 100% no, 100% yes, whatever. Our goal is to have 100. So we'll continue to try to get that.
Now, for other SSAs that you guys have done, what's the timeline of annexation? Is it 1 year, 3 years, 5, 7?
So keep in mind, so when the county typically does these, I'm the only one standing up here because it's on a county water system. This is only one of 2 I've done where it's been in partnership with a municipality, and usually I do the full presentation, and there's not annexation because it's a county-owned water system. There is no option for that here. There is no county water system here. I can tell you, every municipality I've worked with, there is an annexation requirement for water. That is a requirement for water. The other one I worked with was Bensonville. I will tell you, a 5-year period of time is probably one of the longer ones that I've seen for hooking in. Just to be honest with everybody, typically it's you want water, you need to annex now. 5 years is longer than I've seen.
Okay. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
I don't remember the number exactly, but the tax rate on a $300,000 home was like 29 something, 29.1. Okay.
Right there?
Yeah, that's fine. And that's 3,200. Now, if your taxes are already 3,200, does that mean your tax bill is going to be 6,400?
Correct. This is, and I don't want to, I mean, obviously this is more, but I can tell you, everything you're seeing there is an addition to what you're paying now. That's how SSAs work. And that's what everybody has to realize. In order, if the residents want this project, this is the cost on their tax bill in addition to what they're paying now.
Additional to what they're paying
Yes,
now.
absolutely.
And the construction cost right now, let's say is 13 million. When the construction actually starts, it could be 18 million.
Yeah, you raise a great point. I mean, in Public Works, I have had the appreciation for projects has gone way up, supply chain issues. I will tell you it's normalizing a little bit. And if you notice, in this one, way back at the beginning, there is contingency in, what did I have, did I miss it? Yes, there's contingency of 15% in there. The goal in any project, and once again, once it enters the, hey, we have a project phase, Westmont takes over. But I can tell you, we do the same thing. We build contingency into our projects with the goal of not spending one penny of it and the residents benefit. But that contingency is for price escalation.
It just seems a little misleading. Some people won't realize that that new tax rate is going to be on top of your old tax rate. So, you know, somebody's looking at that 3,200 and you got a 3,200 bill already, it's 6,400.
That's without a doubt, that everybody should be very clear. What we're talking about, an SSA is always in addition to what you're paying right now.
Right.
I have two questions. The first is, if this all goes through, what are we going to do about not being able to place bets every morning on what color the water's going to be when we turn on the taps? I mean, I'm thinking the amount of the kind of fun we can have with that sort of chance is going to be a little lower. No, I mean, my serious question is this: is there anything that we can do as far as adding to the voice, to help with requesting grants or finding other sources? Anything we can do by adding our voices to that to make that more likely to happen?
So I can handle that one. And a subdivision is a very powerful force. And a subdivision united is even a more powerful force for a couple different reasons. One, make sure all your neighbors answer the survey. And you know, I've seen it's a very divisive way to do it, because you're gonna have one neighbor want it, one neighbor not want it. It's very divisive. This is the avenue to get water. Right or wrong, this is what the state legislature has given us for the avenue. So first and foremost, answer the survey, encourage people to ask questions, look at the website, help anybody understand it. You know, misinformation is the thing that we see a lot. I always encourage people, look on our website, look on the village's website. We don't have an oar in the water on this one. We want to give you guys information, but as far as getting money, realize part of our process is to A, get the interest rate cheaper if we can, B, get as much grant money, local, state, federal, anything we can. That's our job. What we're presenting to you tonight is our worst case scenario, and that's what we have to do. That's what everybody has to, if you're going to go forward to this project, you're approving worst case scenario tonight. And our goal is to make it come in better than worst case scenario if we can, if we can achieve it. I will tell you that state and federal money, although there's discussions out there about different programs going on, a lot of them haven't materialized yet. The only one I know about is the one our own county board, you know, provided for Lake Michigan water connections across DuPage County. And like I said, there is, as long as this project goes fairly quickly before the ARPA funds have to be expended, there is, you know, at least $500,000, if not maybe a little bit more, that can be brought to bear on this.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, my question's regarding the east side primarily. And these amounts that we've been talking about are pretty significant, more significant than what I had here. But for clarification, we're talking about the annexation and some of the benefits. For example, one of the things that you pointed out was the police service. We already have DuPage County Sheriff. You mentioned snow plowing. We have the Downers Grove Township handles the plowing, and street maintenance seems to be handled by DuPage County. So not to say that those services might not be improvable by working with the Village of Westmont, but my question is, do we have other trade-offs, and costs that we're already incurring versus those benefits, such as we had with the fire department SSA? I mean, there we had a trade-off. That goes away, and it's replaced by the fire department costs that are already baked into the village bill. Do we have similar benefits that come off of other services outside of the village?
The fire was a good, obvious one, because mathematically you could present that. I guess the question for, police and the public safety part of it is your own impression about your satisfaction. I mean, the Westmont patrol is less than a minute away from your house at any time. Are you satisfied with?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't speak clearly, because I'm not concerned about the level of service per se.
Okay.
I think it's a
But
question for me.
we must be paying for the county sheriff, for example. Do those costs, whatever they may be, go away if we annex into the village and then we have the police department representatives?
Understood. That's more of a question for DuPage County. And the question, it's a good question, is, okay, we're paying more costs for services in incorporated Westmont for police, fire, things like that. Do those costs come off for unincorporated DuPage County? The answer is no, they don't. I mean, everybody across the entire county pays the same for DuPage County services. The sheriff is in unincorporated or incorporated, and so those costs it doesn't change what the mill rate is for DuPage County. I will say a couple things that didn't come up, and it's different for everybody, and it's different if you're on community well, if you're on private well. Other things to factor in, and I don't have what's the benefit of this. If you have a water softener in your house, you guys rent a water softener, own it, or get salt, that goes away with Lake Michigan water. You do no longer need a water softener. Keep that in mind. That is one benefit. Another benefit is, and we heard that before, is, hey, what does this do for my home value being Lake Michigan water? I'm sure there's somebody in your subdivision, might be a real estate agent, maybe talk to them. We do see, a potential benefit there. And then the other one is, and I don't know where there currently is fire hydrants in your neighborhood. There is a benefit sometimes for homeowners insurance as well, because of proximity to fire hydrants on the street. Those are all factors that you as a homeowner need to incorporate as you make your decision. It's a very important decision, because I mean, you are saying, yes, we like this, charge us for 20 years. It's a very important decision. You need to weigh in all the factors.
Thank you for answering the question, and thanks for all the work you put into this.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm on the east side, and I understand everything so far. Now, the SSA, that extra that's taxed on annually to our tax bill. Now, after the 20 years, that goes away, correct?
That absolutely, after 20 years, it goes away without a doubt. Oh. It's only for the improvements going on. Right. And that is it. It is earmarked for the water main improvements, and once it's set on your tax bill, the same amount overall for the SSA is collected every year. So absolutely, it comes off for 20 years.
Okay, now, I originally came from Downers Grove, so I went through this whole thing when we connected to sewers. I don't know why subdivisions do half and half, but anyways, we went through the same thing, but we didn't do SSA. We paid it separately, then it didn't go on our tax bill. But I was allowed to pay extra each year. Can you do that with this?
So what you're talking about is a special assessment, or there's different ways to set up, and I've done it in as well for a very, very small project, maybe a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 total project. It's a special assessment, either an agreement that you're billed, it's on your water bill. Unfortunately, for something of the magnitude of 12, $13 million, the only vehicle is an SSA. It's too big to be a special assessment.
Oh, but my question actually is like, okay, if it's 2,800 extra I'm on the east side, whatever it is, 3,000, can I each year give 6,000 towards
No,
it?
no,
I can't.
you cannot.
I gotta
You
stick
cannot.
with the...
Yeah, once
Well,
it's on
you
your
can,
tax
but you don't
bill.
get credit for it.
So, yeah, once it's on your tax bill, that's where, same thing, you can't prepay, you can't pay it off. It is a SSA on that tax bill for that property for 20 years. Whether you own it, whether you sell the house 5 times, it's on that property for 20 years.
All right, I got it. Thank you.
I have a question. This is also for the east side. The $6,000 to $8,000 well abandonment fee, that's something that we just pay separately to an independent contractor that we hire?
So how that works, the private side services and well abandonment, that the total cost is $6,000 to $8,000. That's just not well abandonment. That's the private side service. So that's everything from the right of way to the house involved, correct?
Yes.
And so, once again, you want to listen? You want
We're talking on the east
east side?
I've been avoiding calling it east side, west side. It sounds very West Side Story, but these two phases. So on the east, we only calculated the SSA to go up to the property line. So there'll be additional costs to bring it into the house. If I didn't mention it, every single home, either side that connects to the water system will have a water meter, and it's called a meter spread that has to be installed inside the home where that's collected, so that for those on the east, that's added on top at the time you do a connection.
So the $6,000 to $8,000. I think your question was, how do you pay it? How do you do it?
Yeah,
Do
is
your own
it
contractor?
paid up front in one lump sum the first year when you have to disconnect your
no.
well?
So
or
if-
is it amortized over 20 years?
Understood. So how that works, a private side cost. So the SSA is only the right-of-way in the street. If you're on the east side and you say, okay, year 1 I'm going to connect, I want to connect and get rid of my well, you're responsible for the private side costs. If you want to do it in year 12, then you're responsible for that cost in year 12. I will tell you that what typically does happen, for everybody's benefit, usually I don't deal in community wells like this. Usually it's private wells, subdivisions converting. And what we see is after we run all the public mains, you have private contractors coming through and trying to group 10, 12, 15 homes and giving them all a deal if they go at that point. But yes, you as a homeowner will have to come up with when you're ready to connect, the entire cost of that private side connection.
That's a big lump sum.
Adding to that, what he was talking about, and we already have a contractor that will be doing work, assuming the west phase goes, 100% of those. So we've already got a nice aggregate. The contract will determine those prices, and you should be able to access, more affordability,
But it's not going to go down. It's still, they may give you a break for $1,000,
Yeah,
but it's still going to be a huge lump sum.
You are spot on. That is unfortunately, because there's no way to include that into the cost of the SSA, because unless everybody does it, it's got to be fair and appropriate across the entire group. So if half your neighbors don't do it, there's no way to add that into the SSA for a couple homeowners. So that's why the private side costs, it is a big burden to do it, absolutely. But I will tell you that there are programs out there for, maybe, and the county has those programs, somebody who can't afford the private side improvements, through our community services, there are different programs if you meet financial requirements, if senior citizens have different abilities programs, and if you're interested at that point, we can get in touch. It is income based at that, but there are different programs that could be available.
And the other thing you haven't mentioned is the average monthly cost for city water. I currently live in Oak Brook. My city water bill is never less than $200 a month, and it's in the summer when we're irrigating, it's in the $500 to $600 range. So that's an additional expense.
So there was one slide towards
Right
the
here.
end.
I got it right up there.
Yeah, so the garbage rates and the water rate, so how that is calculated on there, but we're throwing, monthly numbers.
What's average?
Well,
What's
this
average
is
according
based
to?
on average.
Right, but it doesn't say how much 1,000 gallons or 2,000 gallons runs people in dollars.
Right there.
I don't know what usage was.
They're saying $40 a month is all you're going to pay for water?
Estimated annual water bill.
240,
So the
what
light
is
blue,
it?
it says estimated, it says 90 gallons per day times 2.3 people.
How much is that a month?
834 divided by 12. So 834 divided by 12, $70 a month about.
That's it?
Obviously, if you have
That's
if
if
you
that's
have
your
a
usage.
family of 10, it's going to be a lot more than that. But that's 2.3 people. $70 a month is what you're saying, right?
Yeah. But that's at that rate, so that's kind of an average
Yeah.
usage. There's people that use more and people that use less. We have some people that don't even meet the minimum bill of, the first 1,000 gallons is a fixed cost, and we have plenty of people that don't even hit that and still pay the full first increment, because other things are built into it.
Do you have a question over here?
Hi. First of all, thank you for all the work that you have done, your different departments. I know it's been a long couple of years getting this moving, so thank you very much. I've got two questions. My first question is, we're talking about ways to kind of bring the overall cost down. And I know like Liz had secured some federal money to help cover, I think that was the $750,000 you were talking about. If we were to sell the community property, like the community building, the property where the well is, the park, would the money generated from those sales, would that come off of the top of the cost?
I can do that one. The answer is, if there is other contributions, be it public or private, it would come off the cost of the project.
Okay.
So that would have to be, honestly, that has to be secured though, obviously before we start the project, but yes, that is an absolute possibility.
Okay. And my second question is, if there was an emergency, and I know people like to engage in magical thinking and that the system is fine and it's going to run forever till the end of time. That's not reality. So if there is some sort of emergency situation with the community well, and there's a big failure in the system, and homes are without water, how long do we have until the properties are condemned? And once properties are condemned, what's the value on the dollar?
Okay, that's a loaded question there.
Health department.
So the question is, if you have no water,
Yeah.
how long is it condemned? I will tell you, by law, if a house has no water, it's technically uninhabitable. And so what will the health department do? That's a health department question. We've never reached that point where we wanted to see how long it's, I've dealt, keep in mind, our board, we've dealt with homes that the wells were contaminated with pollutants out there, cancer-causing things. We were bringing in bottled water while we were building it. We've been through a lot of different projects over the years. And so the last thing we want to do is have an entire subdivision without water. That is the last thing we want, and that's why we want to give you the information, have you guys decide. And I'm not saying there's no contamination that I know of, but what I'm saying is, our goal is to make sure water stays with this subdivision, and that's why we want to offer this option to you as a selection.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, just kind of an extension of that, in the past, we've had problems with Liberty Park, the community well, and have been able to access other township or other municipalities' water. Is that correct? As far as you know?
Well,
It might have been years ago, but I thought it might have been Downers Grove that we tied into. But that wasn't actually the question I have, it was just that it was there, that was an option if there was an issue with it.
That was an option and is no, and now I'm speaking for other people. So there was an interconnect between the Downers Grove system with Liberty Park that is older than the boundary agreements that I referenced earlier. And they were in there, and the last time that's only useful when there's a well failure. If there's a water main break, you're not taking water from anywhere, so that doesn't apply. But they had a problem, and again, I'm speaking for others, but I believe they did not have the ability to they're supposed to insert a meter in there and measure how much water is being taken from Downers Grove. I'll come back to that. So they had a problem with the meter, and it was just a straight connection, and there was no way to monitor how much that is. And Downers Grove, again, not speaking for them, is not and shouldn't be interested in doing that. And I'll also say, as a water utility, there's a responsibility to account for 100% of the water that you use or lose. So being able to meter it is an important aspect as a utility with the EPA.
Original question I had was, I guess, for the county, because the SSA is a county-initiated vehicle. And let's say I'm on the west side and have no problem with water. I'm used to it by now, and I'd rather enjoy well water over Lake Michigan water, but not too happy with the infrastructure. I know it's getting old. This was placed many, many years ago, 100 years ago, whatever. Would there be consideration for an SSA for the west side for just improving the water delivery from the community well?
So the question, it's actually, think of it as two parts. With a community well, you have the well itself. What kind of condition is that in? The equipment, can it continue to draw the water? What's the quality of the water? And then the infrastructure, bring it from the well to your house. So there's two parts to that.
And all private.
And what?
And all private.
And all the private. So the question is, what is the condition of both of those? And you as a group could say, listen, we don't want to do this SSA. We don't want Lake Michigan water. We want to completely rebuild the mains in our streets and that well. You guys can privately get together and do that with the Liberty Park area. I mean, you can even at that point, although it is not necessarily recommended, you could petition the county to maybe do an SSA for doing that. But keep in mind, the vast majority of the expenses that you have on the Westmont side are the infrastructure for the pipes. So if you're going to replace them anyway,
well,
why wouldn't you have the Lake Michigan water source?
Gotcha.
But the owner of the system is the homeowners association.
Yes, that's a homeowner association.
They can proceed.
They can proceed right now with construction.
Change your rate.
But they could petition the county for an SSA if we wanted to spread it out over 20 years to get that done.
You can do that to pay for a private.
It's up to the board how they would want to proceed with something like that. But once again, I urge you to consider probably the vast majority of the costs for if you're going to go with that option, vast majority of your costs are in Westmont are the infrastructure too. So I don't know if you're going to save that much by doing that.
That's an interesting question.
Okay, thank you very much.
I think it's interesting that the problem that you're facing, these two entities, DuPage County and the Village of Westmont, are facing with this issue, as well as the east side and the west side, and that's two different systems, independent systems or a community system. I hate to throw in yet another thing, but us lucky folks that are north of 39th Street and are in York Township, we just had improvements done on our street, including the sewer mains, the stormwater drains, and new fire hydrants and curbs. You're not going to rip all that out and want to replace it. I'm sure that you're going to want to leave those. They were just done last year.
They were just done last year. We regret that it turned out very nice, and I'm agreeing that it's very well done. But there's no way to build a new Well, there is. The water main network, it depends on where it goes.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to go under the pavement. It can go down one parkway to do that, but there will be disruption. There's no way to...
No, I guess my concern is for all our friends that are in Downers Township, we've paid for those improvements already on the York side.
But not water main, right?
We didn't get water main, did we? No.
So it was the street improvements, and it was...
Yeah.
That's one of those other project categories. So in order to replace the water distribution system that exists today, you will lose that source of water, so therefore we have to build water main down your blocks. How
Got
that's
it.
done, that's part of the details of the design, but it would have to go, yes.
And construction technique is something that is determined during final design. Anywhere from, hey, we can edge it over in the right of way, avoid the pavement, we can directional bore it. That's part of the benefit cost analysis when we go through final design, is figuring out what's the means and methods.
Great. If it gets to that point, please talk to those fellows in York Township, because they really knew what they were doing.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Quick question, on the side with the community well, you mentioned that you need 100% approval, so if one person votes no?
So that's, I just want to make sure. So it's an all or nothing, but that's not on the west side, which is a community well, it is still whether we move forward with correct me if I'm wrong, we can, at 61%, we can still move forward with the SSA, and everybody's going to be converted. Everybody will have to be converted at that point. So there's no way to keep the two of them side by side. So we're still forming the SSA, we're still moving forward, because you're never going to get 100% on any project ever.
Correct.
You were speaking earlier that the target is to get 100%.
Yeah, absolutely,
but
absolutely.
Can't happen.
So, but where the 100% comes in is 100% of people on the west side, if the project moves forward, must be
Have to
connected to Lake
participate.
Michigan water. Because there's no like middle ground. The east side can make your own decision, infrastructure in there, connect, not connect. West side, the community well will be offline at some point.
Okay, I just want to thank both of you, you did a nice job, and I'm pro doing it, so thank you.
Thank you.
How you doing? Just a quick question with the private well section. I know you were saying that you would get rid of the tapping fee if we do it the same time the contractor's out there. If we ran that line ourselves and had it stubbed out for when you guys came through and hooked it up, would you guys still consider waiving that tap fee in? Connection fee?
So the answer is no, but and talking about this, and the water division supervisor is here as well. If we weren't here in Liberty Park, if we were doing this somewhere else, we would be the water main. We wouldn't even do any of the taps that we were doing. But
correct.
Knowing that if we build the infrastructure that we're going to get a majority of the people participate, it's bad practice, but we're going to tap every single home at the main, bring it to the property line so that you're not doing any digging up in the right-of-way. We don't have to disturb that more than once.
No, I'm just saying if I stub it out to where your Buffalo box is going to go.
That would be you doing your own inside
Correct.
plumbing, and as long as you do it with the permit from DuPage County, you'll be
Correct.
okay.
Thank you.
All right.
One more question?
Yes, please. I do have additional question in regards to applying for grants. Two people already asked about it, but I want to get a little deeper. Okay, let's say we are granted those, and would the money be applied towards the whole project before, so we know before the bottom line? Is it possible?
So here's what would happen. When will grants be approved? They're not going to be approved in the next, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, probably 2 or 4 months. So the SSA has to be voted on for the max caps that we've told you. The max caps of 2% of 20 years and of the mill rates for the tax. Our goal if the residents say, yes, do it. Our goal is to hit every source we can to get money, and it would absolutely take it off the project cost before you are billed. Because I would love to send everybody, our Westmont send everybody a letter, you know, at this project starts going, great news, we're moving forward, and we just got a $5 million grant from the feds. It's going to reduce it that much. And absolutely, whatever money we get before we take out the EPA loan is going to reduce it dollar for dollar.
So we still, you mentioned there's 2 years before the project would start, and then if you apply for grant and it takes about weeks, maybe 3-4 months to know, that is
No,
not that long.
I'm saying you will never know. I mean, some of these things, I mean, federal money, we chase federal money all the time.
Well, there is money available, yes.
Yeah, we
Yes.
chase it all the time, and sometimes it takes a while.
And sometimes it just appears, and you've got a month to apply for it. You know, it depends on how the program is set up.
That's part of any, because we're going to hire a professional engineering company to design this, and they will also be pursuing all of the grant opportunities we possibly can.
And they're out here tonight, and I also want to point out for everybody's benefit, there's a lot of staff outside answering questions out there as well. We can keep doing this, or we can go out there and you go look at boards and continue.
I do know that we have good chance of getting few millions, even half of the money.
I certainly hope so.
Yes.
I certainly hope so. That'd be
We-
excellent.
Look, we send money overseas, we send money here and there, okay, so why can't we support our own subdivision, okay, in need? Few million is nothing. If we're talking few 100,000, it's not much help. We need at least half of the money.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Question over here?
Yeah, I had more of a comment than a question. The Liberty Park Homeowners Association, they have two wells, so if one well goes down, they've got another well available. 2 booster pumps to pump the water out of the reserve tanks. If one goes down, there's another one. So it's fully backed up. And I've lived over there for 50 years, and I've never had a problem. And we go through the same water testings that everybody else does that supplies water. That's an Illinois requirement, so.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Question here?
Ready for me? What is our governor doing for us? What is our governor doing for us? We're paying plenty of taxes. What are they doing for us?
Well, you know what? The one thing I will say, the 2% low-interest loan that we're talking about, that's an IEPA loan. And there is no other opportunity we have to get lower interest rates than through the state, and that's IEPA. So that is a huge benefit that we will be getting on this project, is that 2% interest rate.
So our taxes aren't helping.
What's that?
Our taxes aren't going to help this at all. Am I right? The taxes that we're paying now is not going to help us at all.
It is absolutely in addition to what you're paying now. Absolutely.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Not only that, is it's very warm in here. It could just be me, but
we're kind of
much nicer climate
here, though,
outside,
too.
and there's plenty of people in the lobby, and let's go look at poster boards.
Are there any other questions?
Any chance that there will be a spreadsheet sent out to the next questionnaire about what the cost will be to the homeowners?
The questionnaire, every single property has the spreadsheet out there with what your specific property would cost you. There's a plan to mail it out.
I don't know if we're going to mail it or post it.
What's that? Our goal is to try to get the information out, and we will absolutely.
I'm saying that most of these people are going to make a decision with the possible.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Individually, per homeowner, they're not going to make the right decision. They should be supplied that information in the next questionnaire.
Okay. Understood. All right.
You'd have to stuff it by
We can do
address.
that. We can do that. The more information that the homeowners can get, the better. I mean, knowledge is what we want. We want as more people